Hello everybody, today's video is going to be on the Field Training Officer program, also known as the FTO program. So if you are in the police academy or you are about to enter the FTO program and you would just like to get some information, you're in the right spot, so pay attention. I was a field training officer myself for the Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office. I did that for several years. So I have a little bit of experience, obviously, in being a training officer, and obviously I've been through the FTO program myself as a young deputy sheriff. So with my department, the process to become an FTO was you had to put a letter of interest in, and that would go to your captain, and they would approve that. In this case, they did. I would say a field training officer should be an officer that is seasoned in patrol. And they should also have a good reputation within the department. They should be respected. Now, how much experience should an FTO has? It's going to depend on what areas they have worked. It could be anywhere from 2 to probably 5 years or more. If they've worked in a very busy area, maybe they only need a couple of years of experience. But if they've worked in a slower, less crime of an area, maybe they need 5 years or 6 years, something like that. I would say you're probably on an average, you're a rookie until you're about 5 years, and you're well seasoned when you're about 8 years, and you're a veteran after 10 years. That's just my take. Anyway, once I got approved to be a field training officer, I went through an FTO training program with my department, and they basically just told us how to fill out these daily observation reports known as DORs and how to grade and things like that. But my FTO program was about 11 weeks, I believe it was. They could be a little bit more or less depending on what your department policy is. But when you're in the FTO program, you will have a DOR, daily observation report, done on you every day. At least in my case, they did. And, you know, I've got one right here that I had with the Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office, okay? And the lowest number is 1, and it goes all the way to a 7. And you need at least a minimum acceptable level of a 4 in each area to graduate. And a 4 minimum acceptable level would be that officer that is out of FTO. That average officer would be 4. So if you get anything above a 4, that is superior standards, and that's obviously good. But as you can see from this daily observation report, they judge you on appearance and your attitude, your knowledge, your performance. And so that's like, you know, report writing and driving skill, and how do you handle the radio communications, and your investigative skill, and your relationships with other people, things like that. There's also a section on the back here of most acceptable and least acceptable performances of the day. For example, in this case, my FTO, my primary, completed his first burglary report with very little assistance, and the least acceptable of the day was that I handed the victim of the burglary case the case number on a sliver of paper, and my FTO noted that that was unprofessional on its appearance, and that sliver of paper could easily be lost. And so you just have to take the criticism. Obviously, it wasn't anything too bad, but you know, that's the DOR report that has to be done. So typically, or what happened in my case is, during that 11 weeks of FTO, I was assigned initially with my primary training officer for a 2-week period. And then the last 2 weeks, I went back to my primary training officer. And so I spent 4 out of the 11 weeks with my primary. And the primary is basically going to call the shots whether they decide to let you out of the FTO program, whether you are passed off, or whether you're recommended for termination for something that's really bad, or sometimes they will extend you if you're struggling, and maybe they feel like you need a little bit more training before you're cut loose on your own. The first week is typically what we call limbo week. limbo week, you're just in the passenger seat. You're not really expected to do much other than just observe and ask questions. Some FTOs are pretty cool about it, and if you want to be a little bit more assertive, they'll let you drive on the first day and start handling calls. That's what I did. I told my FTO that I was a hands-on learner, and I preferred to do that, and that's what he let me do. But, you know, you're going to move around through different officers. They're going to have different levels of experience. You're going to learn something new. Just take the good and the bad from each of those, and in the end, you know, when you're on your own, you can work independently. You're just going to take what you've learned from everybody and incorporate your own style. Once you've graduated from FTO, you'll probably have up to a year, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less of your probationary job probation, and you know, anytime during that they can let you go. But once you're off of probation, you probably should have more protections in your job. At least, you know, we did. Some tips that I can give you for FTO. There's about 3 or 4 tips that at least were my pet peeves as a field training officer. Number 1, officer safety. Officers want to know that they can count on you when shit hits the fan and there is a fight or worse going on. Okay? You always want to make sure that, number 1, your gun side, when you're talking to people, is always away from that suspect you're talking to so it cannot be easily grabbed. That was a big one that I harped on people about. Whether you are a contact officer or a cover officer, the cover officer would be the backup officer, and the contact officer is that initial officer that's typically doing all the talking. You never ever want to watch another officer take somebody that's combative or is a resisting arrest, and you are just watching that situation go by. There's no quicker way to be labeled a coward than by just standing by and watching somebody get into a fight with a suspect and you're just sitting there watching. You want to be the first ones to jump in there and get hands-on with somebody, and that's going to show how you can prove yourself to the other officers to get credibility. I know that I had an officer, he was a very seasoned veteran officer, and he was in his 60s, and he was backing me on a juvenile call where I got into a fight inside of a home with a gangbanger, and he was just sitting there watching me struggle getting this guy into handcuffs while we were on the floor of the bedroom. And then my last 2 years on the job, the same officer that was just standing by watching me take somebody into custody was seen sitting in his car hiding about 3 blocks away in an active shooter call where I was taking shots on a man with a gun call, and this coward was sitting in his patrol car listening to me getting shot at and doing nothing. They do exist, these cowards in law enforcement, and it sucks, but if the administrators like them, they'll keep them on regardless. And in this case, they didn't take any disciplinary action on him, and they kept him on. And I think he's a school resource officer now. So really good place for this guy to be at. You always want to back up your area partners when they're on traffic stops, whether they call for your assistance or not. If you're not doing anything, float that way and stop and make sure that they're okay. You always want to listen to the radio and know where your area partners all are at any given time. In case they need backup, you can start heading that way without having the dispatcher give you the address, and you can get there a lot quicker, and it signals to your training officer that you're aware of things and that you have that mindset of officer safety and it's in the right place. Here's another thing. You always want to know where you're at any given time. Okay, I have been quizzed as a training officer, and I did this to my rookies. I would stop them from driving into a neighborhood, and I would say, "Where are you at? You're getting shot at. Where are you?" Sometimes they knew, sometimes they didn't know. The easiest way to do this is when you're driving around, whenever you change streets, Note the street that you're on. And then if you have to get out of your car suddenly, or you're in an emergency situation and somebody needs to know where you're at, it's easy just to look at a house or a street sign and find the number, as long as you know what street you're on. Always, when you go places, you always want to have your back to the wall. If you're eating lunch with your partners, you want to strategically set out in your mind to where you can see the whole room. It's part of that mindset. When you're parking in parking lots, writing reports, you always want to position your car to where you can see everything in front of you and somebody can't walk up on your police car and hurt you. I know on graveyards, those little interior dome lights, we would put red electrical tape over those, and it would create a red light on the interior of our car, and it just made us more difficult to see from somebody that might be approaching our car in the dark time. It's all about that mindset of officer safety and keeping yourself safe. Number 2, you want to know your policy and your criminal code, okay? Know your shit before you start doing that job. Before you start your FTO, you should have reviewed your department policy manual, if you can get a copy of it, and review your criminal code from the academy. Okay, and know your stuff, because you probably will. If you've got a good FTO, they're going to quiz you on the laws. They're going to quiz you on department policy. I know I did, and I would just quiz them as they were driving around, and we had downtimes. And if they failed my quizzes, they were dinged on their DORs for their knowledge of policies and procedures, and sometimes I would send them home with homework assignments for areas that they were weak in their knowledge. You never want to guess on a question that's asked by a private citizen or your FTO. If you don't know the answer, be honest with them and tell them you don't know what the answer is, and you'll find out what it is and you'll get back to them. Also, don't write bullshit tickets to people, okay? I had one particular officer, he was very cocky, and he was on a traffic stop in a grocery store parking lot, and there was an open container of alcohol. And this person, upon some field sobriety testing, was not impaired. This was just simply they had an open container of beer, and he was writing a ticket for that. And I was trying to explain to him that tickets for open containers needed to be on a highway, and that was something that could not be written on private property. Well, number 1, he proceeded to argue with his FTO and try to tell me that I was wrong. And number 2, he was saying, well, what does it matter? They're not going to know the difference anyway. They'll just plead guilty to it. Can you believe that? I documented that in his DOR report that he was going to write a bullshit ticket, even though I called it to his attention that it was not lawful for him to do. I documented it, and they didn't listen to me, the administrators, and they kept him on. And they allowed him to complete his FTO. They allowed him to successfully complete his job probation. And then he went to another department. And I heard just recently that he is actually a deputy chief for a police department here in Utah. I think that's wrong. I think he should have been terminated for lying and being dishonest, but out of my control. And this often is why FTOs don't want to remain in the program, is because administrators don't listen to them. You want to write good police reports, okay? Supervisors, command staff, prosecutors, media reports, and private citizens, they read your police reports. And your reports reflect on you as an officer. And it either gives you credibility or it gives you a bad reputation. I know that I had a DA, I've had more than one district attorney or prosecutor tell me that they knew me as an officer by the name on my report, complimenting me on the reports that I wrote. And they would say, hey, Phil, I know that I have a good case, a good deal when I see your name on it. I know that's a good thing, and I rarely have to ask you for further information before filing a case. Knowledge is power. There's nothing better than to have a good relationship and a rapport with the prosecutor when you're trying to get your arrests prosecuted, instead of just having declination letters sent to you that they're refusing to prosecute your case. Last one, you never want to argue with your field training officer, okay? Accept criticism gracefully. You're a new officer and you're going to make mistakes. A simple thank you goes a long way. Thank you when they criticize you. Every FTO has something good and not so good to teach you. Take the best and throw out the not so good things that you don't like, and you're going to be able to incorporate your own style once you get out of FTO. Here's another thing. Don't expect to be liked or accepted as a rookie, especially a trainee when you're in the FTO program. Speak when you're spoken to, and just try to remain quiet and have your ears open and listen. You'll learn a lot. Don't take it bad if you're not accepted readily. It takes some time for the officers to get to know you. Hopefully, when it's all over with, you will fit in and you will earn a nickname. Probably means you are well liked if you get a nickname. There is light at the end of the tunnel when you finish FTO. There's no better feeling than going there and picking up a brand new police car and making that first traffic stop on your own without your FTO in the passenger seat babysitting you. Thanks for watching.